name Babe Ruth, you think baseball. It almost works the other way around too. When you hear the word baseball, maybe you think Babe Ruth. Right? He was that good. He was that influential. You see, he had unbelievable power for his time. His record 714 home runs stood for almost 40 years. A good biblical number, meaning a really long time. And if all that wasn't enough, he was also a great pitcher. He was just the idol of sports fans. In time, though, as with everybody, age took its toll. His popularity began to go down, and eventually the unthinkable happened. He was traded. Can you imagine that? The Yankees traded him. And in one of his last games as a player, wearing a Braves uniform, I don't think we have any footage of him wearing a Braves uniform, Babe Ruth played terribly. He struck out, he made several errors, and as Ruth walked back to the dugout with his chin down, his head down, looking dejected, there came out from the crowd just an enormous storm of boos and hissing and heckling and people shaking their fists at him. And this is how it goes. This is life. No matter how good you are, no matter how committed you are, no matter how accomplished or loyal or determined you are, there comes a time. There comes a time. I mean, if Babe Ruth can be turned against, traded, discarded, just like that, what chance do we have? There will come a time when our employer won't want us anymore. There will come a time when all the things we're respected for now won't be remembered by hardly anyone. And those who do remember won't care. There will come a time when society as a whole passes us right by. There may even come a time when our friend, our own spouse, maybe even our own children will have had enough. But look, we're prepared for this. We're prepared for this. We are. We may not think about it all the time. We may never think about it. But we're prepared. We are. We're trained to look for the signs. You see, we see the first sign that our boss is trying to push us out. And right then, emotionally, we're already gone. Aren't we? We see the first sign that people don't care anymore, that we can do this or we can do that. And we stop caring about the this or the that and those who once cared. We see the first sign that our friend, that our husband, our wife, our child is losing interest, and we try to lose interest just as fast. we don't want to be the last one showing interest. We see the first signs of booing and hissing and heckling, and we head for the dugout. We realize our time is up. We shift gears. We flip the switch. We turn off. We turn off. And we set our sights somewhere else. We're prepared. We are prepared for what happened to Babe Ruth to happen to us. So then, what's wrong with Elisha? Not Elijah, but Elisha. Elijah was someone else. Elijah was larger than life. Elijah was not just your run-of-the-mill prophet. Elijah was not only tuned into God enough to speak for God, the normal role of a prophet, but amazing things happened in and around Elijah all the time. And so when it came time to appoint a successor, he knew this would be no small task. These were big shoes to fill. Well, again, listening to God, Elijah heard that this farmer named Elisha would succeed him. So the prophet went and found the successor, and the successor was immediately up to the task. He became the prophet's student. He followed him everywhere. He showed potential. He showed devotion. He showed giftedness. Hung on the prophet's every word. Copied his every move. And then it came. The first signs. The first signs that the prophet was moving on. That the prophet was going to leave him. The prophet tells his successor, look, this is as far as we go together. And so you figure the successor would flip the switch, right? Would turn off, would shut down, and move on. Instead, the successor does something else. Doesn't he know any better? Doesn't he know when it's time? Doesn't he know when he's hearing the booing and the hissing and the heckling? What's wrong with this successor? Listen to this story unfold. A reading from the book of 2 Kings, the 2nd chapter. Listen for the word of God. Now, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha, and they said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jericho." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of the prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But Elisha said, As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the company of prophets also went and stood at some distance from them, as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle, rolled it up, and struck the water. The water was parted to the one side and to the other until the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." Elijah responded, "You have asked a hard thing, yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his own clothes and tore them in two pieces. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, Babe Ruth walked toward the dugout, chin down, dejected, and out of the crowd came an enormous storm of boos and hissing and heckling and people shaking their fists at him. And then something remarkable happened. A little boy jumped over the railing, and with tears coming down his face, he just ran out and hugged the old slugger. Babe Ruth patted him gently on the head and took his hand, and they walked off the field together. I mean, Ruth could have flipped that switch, could have turned off, could have set his sights elsewhere, could have said, "Hey, you know, you all going to treat me this way? I'm out of here." And he could have completely overlooked or ignored that boy. But in taking the boy's hand, he showed that he hung in there with his fans to the end. And he was a better person for it. Elisha hung in there with Elijah to the end, and he was a better person for it. Oh, we can picture that scene. I can see it. They get to Gilgal, and the prophet stoops over and he looks his student in the eyes, and he's afraid to hurt his student's feelings, but he knows it's for the best, and he says, "Okay, so this is it. You're on your own now." And the student says, No, I'm not leaving you." And the prophet is just shocked that his student hasn't flipped the switch, responds, "Okay." And they get to Bethel, and the prophet tries again, and again his student refuses to shut down and turn off. "Elisha, what's wrong with you?" They travel to Jericho, the same thing. So the prophet shrugs his shoulders and says, "Oh, all right." They get to Jordan. The prophet says, "Look, I don't get this. I don't get this. Why are you so loyal? What do you want?" And the student, just as sure can be, says, "I want twice the Spirit you have." The prophet understands then and says, "Okay, all right. You want to be filled with all that God has to offer? You want to be the person that only God can make you? You want to be all that you can be? Then watch me leave. Watch me leave. Stick with me while I'm leaving you. Don't flip the switch. Don't turn off. If you can do that, you'll have what you're looking for. If you can be that loyal, you'll be twice what I am, and you'll have way more than I've ever been given." And Elisha does. When you and I bring this kind of love to our relationships, we are transformed. You know, when our boss is trying to push us out and we remain focused and determined to do our job, determined to do right by the organization, determined to do right by our boss, even, the Spirit runs through our bones. When people don't care anymore that we can do this or that, and we keep on doing the this or that for the love of the thing and for the glory of God, the Spirit makes us into men and women. When our friend, when our husband, when our wife is losing interest, and we refuse to lose interest just as fast, when we're willing to be the last one showing interest, we are twice what we once were. When you and I hear the booing and the hissing and the heckling, and we stand out there on that field remaining committed, even if there's only one little boy who cares, we are transfigured. We're transfigured. This is Transfiguration Sunday, and Jesus shows us the way. Jesus is transfigured because he contains the love that watches other people leave. He watched his disciples fall down on their faces on the top of that mountain. He watched the crowds disperse as they lost interest in him. He watched his own friends scatter real quick when he got in trouble. He watches you and I walk away every day. He watches you and I walk away every day. And he never flips the switch. He never turns off or shuts down or sets his sights someplace else. He hangs in there even as we whisk ourselves away in chariots of fire. He is the root and the fulfillment of all love, and so he shines like crazy. And when we have someone like this in our life, it makes all the others so much easier to bear. Having someone like this, having him, means we can watch people leave. We can watch people leave. We can be the faithfulness that the world needs so badly but is so poorly acquainted with. Precisely because he will never leave us or forsake us. We can live a different sort of life because he is our life. We can love in a way that baffles others and fills us to overflowing. Watch them leave. Watch them leave. Watch them leave. And watch what happens. Boo! Hiss! Boo! When was the last time you heard that? Probably wasn't that long ago. Are you hearing it these days? If not, it won't be long till we hear it. And we can be ready. We can be ready. We can be prepared, just in a different way than we've always been prepared. We can be ready to watch them leave and be transfigured because Christ is beside us.